Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is David Penn, and I'm a research analyst for the Finovate Group. Welcome to our InsurTech Rising webinar, AI and Insurance, How to Get Started. We have two guests with us today who are eager to discuss the interesting nexus between insurance technology and the rise and spread of artificial intelligence. We will introduce them in just a moment. First, know that this is an interactive presentation. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of our discussion. To send us a question, just click on the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. Second, know that we will be live tweeting today's discussion. If you'd like to follow along or participate in that Twitter conversation, please be sure to hashtag your tweets InsurTech Rising Webinar. And with no further ado, let's meet our guests, Craig Bedell and Patrice Scully. Craig, let's start with you.
Thanks, David. I'm Craig Bedell. I'm a member of IBM's Global Insurance Industry Leadership Team, and I'm responsible for guiding IBM's success in the insurance marketplace. Insurance is one of IBM's largest industries, and we have the distinct pleasure of servicing many insurance companies of the largest size across the globe, and of all sizes, in fact. I bring with me an extensive insurance industry experience as well as an infatuation for how technology can be successfully used to benefit my industry, which is insurance.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrice Scully. I'm a practice manager in the IBM Watson and Cloud Platform Expert and Delivery Services organization. I manage a team that develops business solutions that allows clients to quickly prove the value of AI and Watson technology within their organization. My team also provides consulting and implementation experience across the Watson organization. During my career at IBM, I've had many years of IT experience with positions in sales, program and project management, business transformation, product management, and most recently, Watson and AI. I'd like to thank all of you for attending this webinar, whether live or in person or as a replay later on.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and get started. And again, Craig, we'll turn to you first. In your role as an insurance industry executive for IBM, what are some of the common challenges that insurers face with regards to expertise in addressing some of these industry demands?
Yeah, thanks, David. So, insurance, as we all know, is a business of trust and promises, all centered around risk management. And whether it's property and casualty or general insurance or life and annuity, the industry is facing challenges ranging from new customer demands, changes in the risk environment, and ways in which to manage that. Competition along the lines of product, pricing, customer service, distribution, and claims are driving insurers to really strive to meet market expectations while maintaining profitability. And there are regulatory and compliance demands that continue, both privacy, security, solvency, and fairness, and these remain as strong as ever. Insurers are also striving to develop and deliver new products and services in a meaningful way to personalize their relationship, but whether that is with personal clients or personal lines clients or corporate clients. There's another major pressure today having to do with systems, both technical and personnel. Overall, insurance companies as a group are struggling to become more modern and attractive both to clients as well as employees. And there's a need to attract new talent while maintaining the existing insights that the companies have. And there's a real demand by clients for more personalized point of sale services and sound, reliable insights and advice. We're seeing great opportunities for being able to improve the interactions that we have with producers, with clients, and foster new talent as we try to bring that in to manage the change of our organizations.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and go up from there. Patrice, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, cognitive computing. These always sound like massively complex and almost mysterious sorts of efforts. How do clients actually go ahead and get started with AI?
This is a great question because we get this from clients all the time, and I've shown here on the slide that the three-step approach that we use, that we find it's very effective in helping clients on their AI journey. And I use the word journey because AI is not one and done. It's a journey. You'll learn, grow, and evolve. So the steps that IBM shares with clients are prove, adopt, and scale. And let me briefly review these steps. Prove, in this step, you will prove that AI computing can positively impact your business with an initial targeted use case. You show that AI can add value, transform your business, and be impactful to your business, whether it's for internal or external clients. This is really the most important step because if you do this right, you can use it to accelerate AI in your organization. Next is adopt, and in this step, you will adopt an AI approach and understand how it will change your organization and ways of working. You do this by reviewing what you learned during Prove about how AI will impact your organization, IT, business processes, roles, etc. So you look at the changes you need to make as you take what you learned and apply it to your AI journey to make AI meaningful and impactful to your business. And you really need to be agile in this phase. And finally, scale. During the last phase, you scale AI computing solutions and capabilities across your enterprise so it can transform your business, drive large amounts of business value, and positively impact your customers and bottom line.
Interesting, and I appreciate the way that you broke those three down. Craig, looking at this and thinking about this prove, adapt, and scale approach, what trends do you see with regards to insights and advice for producers and insurers that might benefit from AI?
Yeah, so as Patrice just said, AI is a journey, and it's a journey that not all insurance companies have started. And like many journeys, the early adopters have already made discoveries and learned lessons from which others can benefit. And the AI journey for insurance companies has evolved, and already carriers and IBM have been able to productize and commoditize aspects of AI for purpose-built uses. AI is not necessarily a mountain climbing adventure. The landscape of difficulty has begun to flatten, and the journey can now be taken in a logical, complementary section approach. And, we're really seeing the application of AI and cognitive computing around providing timely and accurate advice, as I said earlier, both to producers as well as clients and to employees within an organization. I like to refer to the term democratizing expertise. And that's really what the core capabilities of AI are bringing to insurance companies today. And we'll talk about some examples in a minute.
Yeah, I do want to come back to that idea of democratizing expertise in just a moment, but I do want to take a look at sort of the steps that Patrice just sort of enumerated there with Prove, Adapt, and Scale. Let's take again a look at Prove, Patrice. Sounds like a critical step. Can you tell us what's most important here?
Sure, and you make a key point, David, because Prove really is the most important steps. If you take a look at the slide, you can see there's multiple key elements here that you should consider, like business value, having viable data or content, technical feasibility, speed to implement, alignment with corporate initiatives. But I would say the three that I would really focus on are having viable content or data, speed, and business value. So thinking about business value, you need to pick a targeted use case that adds value. Don't pick something that's cool or something that doesn't have much impact to your business. I know AI is new technology, so people sometimes want to get very cool and funky, but you really are trying to prove the value here. So pick something that has impact to your business and use that proof to accelerate AI within your organization. A second key point is speed. So let's get moving. Speed is key here. Get going because AI is here. Your competitors are using it. We don't want you to spend months and months planning. And the third point is don't be afraid to make mistakes in this phase. You're new to AI. You'll be learning a lot. A lot of clients benefit tremendously from the lessons learned in the first project and accelerate the next phases by applying these lessons learned. And to help with Prove, my teams actually developed several Watson business solutions. You may remember Watson AI technology from Jeopardy, the American game show, where Watson beat the top two Jeopardy players back in 2011, and that was really when Watson first came on board. So these targeted solutions address specific use cases and can be implemented in about 4 weeks using your data and expertise, your experts in your company, to show the value of AI to your business. So, for example, Craig just talked about democratizing expertise. One of the solutions is called Expert Assist, and it's designed to provide internal people with the information they need to do their jobs quickly instead of having to look for information across multiple sources or having to call center agents or more experienced people for information. So it really takes the knowledge of the experts in your organization and delivers it to the people who need it. For an example, an insurance company might have new financial advisors use Expert Assist to gather the information they need to prepare tailored recommendations for their clients, resulting in more meaningful conversations. Plus, they learn knowledge much more quickly. They don't have to call the call center. So it's really a way to scale the expertise of senior people to newer people in your organization. And as I mentioned, when we do these business solutions, again, they're very quick, we work with your data and your experts to make it impactful for your company. So you have a solution that works for you. So they're a great way to get started with Prove. And in summary, pick a use case that's impactful to your business, get going, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You really want to get people excited about AI.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Patrice. Craig, can you give us some examples of how insurance companies have started to prove that AI works for them with this expert assist type pattern?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Patrice said early on, AI was a mountain climbing exercise, and the thinking was it was a big bang type of an approach that took months and months and literally millions of dollars to exercise. And what we're seeing in the evolution of these capabilities and the productization of them are examples like a U.S. P&C insurer that has a large portion of its portfolio in disaster-prone areas, and it knows from experience that after an event that they get literally swamped by first notice of loss calls post those disaster events, and their call center gets easily overwhelmed. And as such, they have standby contracts with external parties to man the call center. And they have both concerns about the quality of service, but also the expense associated with that. So they began with the early adoption of the first phase of AI in being able to create a basic first notice of loss call response system. And by being able to do that, they were able to non-renew the contracts that they had with the external call centers and meet those initial demands. But then one of the next steps they did was add further advice to that cognitive call center assistant. In fact, what they did was analyze over 40,000 recorded first notice of loss calls to be able to understand the elements of sentiment as well as questions that were asked during those calls, both to improve their ability to escalate callers needing special attention, offer additional risk management advice, and even identify upsell opportunities during that first notice of loss process. And this was all done in an iterative way, being able to roll out different capabilities within the cognitive suite of functions that are available today.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Craig. Patrice, the next step you mentioned is adopt. You mentioned being, in this phase, agility was particularly important. Could you talk a little bit why that's the case?
Sure. So with Adopt, you're looking at what do I need to do to adopt an AI approach and understand how AI will change your organization and ways of working. You need to work in an agile manner here. For example, business and IT should work as one team. With AI, you can access data you may not have had the ability to access before. For example, unstructured data. When I talk about structured data, I mean like tables, things like that are very structured. But now you can get to unstructured data with AI. So who owns that data? How do I access it? Who uses it and manages it? You may not have had relationships there before, so there's new relationships you'll need to form. And you will train Watson to answer specific business questions. So you need to involve the business experts in your company. You need to understand who the customer is and how they talk or ask questions so you can design an AI system for them. If you remember, Craig just mentioned for the client he was referencing that they analyzed 40,000 calls. So they really went to the heart of who are their users, what do their users say, how do their customers talk when developing their system, and that's exactly what I'm talking about here as well. So you want to design an AI system, and IT cannot do this alone. So work in an agile manner across your organization. AI definitely will lead to new relationships between different parts of your organizations. And remember, take the lessons you learned in Prove and apply them during Adopt.
Interesting. Craig, who do you think are the key stakeholders that need to be involved at the Prove and Adopt stages of an AI strategy implementation?
No, hang on. I love this sort of question, and I'm sorry if I start to sound philosophical, but it's an area that I'm really passionate about because, when it comes to making technology successful, it's absolutely imperative that and key to any project, but especially those involving AI, that business subject matter experts be involved. Additionally, there's so much that of what technology is about today that's transformative. And it's critical that senior management be involved and on board for the business changes as well as the cultural change management that's necessary to transform an organization. But I like to point out that as early adopters of technology, insurance companies went through dramatic transformation already. Business wasn't involved, in part because technology was foreign. IT people were involved spoke an entirely different language, and most of what they talked about was totally foreign to us as business people. So we abdicated our responsibility to be involved, and both sides failed to communicate properly. Look at what we have now as far as legacy systems and processes that we complain about. This has all changed. In fact, I like to point out that there's no longer two sides to the equation, that business and technology really can and need to work hand in hand. But that's just part of it. AI is all about augmenting business intelligence, and as I said earlier, I'd like to say democratizing expertise. So AI systems possess no magical powers. They need to be taught, and teaching them needs to come from subject matter experts. That's another reason why business subject matter experts absolutely have to be involved. And that's another reason why the prove, adopt, scale is so important, is the business needs to learn to best teach and utilize AI and adopt it into its processes.
Certainly. So, Patrice, what would you say is the biggest mistake that companies make at that adopt stage?
I think if I key on what Craig said, one mistake you can make is to not understand that you need to involve both your experts and actual end users as part of your AI strategy when developing the solutions. So, for example, if you're setting up an AI solution to help provide expertise to your clients, whether internal or external, you need to understand how the client will ask questions. What's the language they use? What data do they need? What do they expect from a system? So, for example, you want to try and get real questions from real end users, not just what you think those end users would ask, right? So how do they actually ask the questions? What language do they use, and what will they say? And then involve them in the design and testing. Get the system in front of representative users as early as possible. You can start even with a few users, but to really maximize the benefits and incorporate what you're learning. You want to ensure that the AI solution meets their needs in a manner they understand. And when you adopt the AI strategy in your organization, definitely make sure you consider this. Another key point is AI may lead to new roles. It's new technology. You're accessing data you didn't have before, so you may need new roles to manage the data or help with your AI solution, and be open to that. As I mentioned earlier, be agile. Work with people from across your organization. Take the lessons you learned from Prove and apply them in Adopt.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and move toward the final scale that you mentioned, the final step that you mentioned, scale. When a company looks to scale artificial intelligence across the organization, what are some of the ways that an insurance company can use AI all the way across? As a question for Craig.
Let me give you an example, a really great example, and some of you may have heard me talk about this case before because Prudential in Singapore has been so proud of the accomplishments that it's made it's willing to offer these as public testimony. But we're seeing a huge market opportunity with regards to life insurance in the market in Singapore. And they were desperately needing to add as many as 5,000 new agents to its ranks, almost doubling the size of its sales force at that point. And the internal Pru agent service center staff was already struggling to meet the call center volumes from the existing agency force for client, product, and services advice. And they undertook with Watson Expert Assist a project to provide scale to the capacity of that call center by being able to create self-service cognitive capabilities for advice to the agents, both around customer, around product, and around service. And the project was so successful that even after adding close to 5,000 new agents, the call center volumes dropped by over 30%, allowing the customer service reps there to handle much more meaningful and provide much more valuable conversations with the agents in special need perspectives, all the while by seeing the new agency plant be much more productive statistically than the existing agency plant had been, and they attribute that in large part to the timely advice that was being offered to them through this cognitive call center assist program.
Excellent, excellent. Let's spend a little bit more time talking about this. Patrice, when preparing to scale, what sort of questions should customers be asking themselves?
So I've shown the scale slide here, and for some of our clients, they actually, if you look in the center, they do set up AI Center of Competencies. That's one way to do it. But even if you don't do that, there's several key areas you really want to look at when you're scaling. So first, let me start with leadership and governance. Those are things like thinking about where does AI fit? Is it going to be a project or a competency for my organization? Who's the sponsor? Who should own and lead it? Moving over to technology and tools. What does the technology do? How does it fit in my organization? And what else does the technology need to do to assist my adoption? Then there's measurement and reporting, and this is another key area because AI is different. So you need to ask yourself, how should I measure and report AI successes? Should I look at traditional metrics like ROI, or are there other metrics I should consider? For example, we've talked a lot about a call center. So don't just look at shortening the call time. You may do that, but you may also want to free up call center people for higher level questions, which is a benefit. So, for example, if you can put the expertise in the hands of users and they don't have to call the call center for those quick questions that are easily answered, as Craig said, Peru found that their call center reps could spend time in deeper, more detailed calls. So, yeah, your call center time might go up, but, hey, look at your volumes. You're able to handle so much because you're really spending time on the deep, meaningful questions, and the shorter ones that could be answered aren't even calling into the call center anymore. So think about, your metrics and reporting here based on what you're seeing and what you're learning. And then finally, teams and skills. With AI, you will definitely need some new skills, and you'll need new roles to manage data or to work with AI solutions. So ask yourself, what are the skills, and how do I enable my AI organization or competency? What methods and best practices are critical? You may need to hire new people or maybe move current people into new roles. For example, at one of our clients, because they had an AI application that they put in front of their call center volumes went down. But they had new roles in the data area, so they actually moved some of the folks who were in the call centers over to these new roles, and it was a win-win. Company had new people in these new roles that they needed, but the former call center agents really felt like, wow, now I'm in a data AI role. It's very cool. So it was really a great way to move some existing resources in the company to newer areas. So you really want to look at all four of these during scale to ensure you're asking a broad set of questions to successfully implement AI in your organization.
Very, very interesting, and definitely you can see how the different ways that this technological transformation can be such a major event, not just for consumers, but for workers themselves who can really discover new opportunities for themselves and for the units and their teams that they work with. So a whole lot of interesting things there. I want to ask you on this notion of scaling, and I almost have a suspicion what the answer might be, but what would you say some of the biggest mistakes are that carriers make when they are trying to scale?
So I think not looking at the four areas I mentioned and asking a broad set of questions. AI as a technology will continue to evolve, so as an organization implementing AI, you'll continue to learn and evolve as you scale across your organization. So you don't have to have perfect answers to all the questions. Go ahead and scale and be flexible to change as you continue your AI journey.
Excellent. I'd like to ask Craig this question as well, his take on this. I just wanted to remind our audience that we do have an interactive presentation, so if you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and submit them to us via the Ask a Question button. We're going to have some time at the end of the presentation for you to be able to ask both Craig and Patrice any questions you might have about InsurTech and artificial intelligence. So definitely feel free to go ahead and send those questions in. We've got a few in the queue, but there's certainly room for more. So Craig, in terms of your response to that question, some of the biggest mistakes that carriers make when scaling.
Yeah, so AI is a journey. We've said that before, and any journey needs a roadmap that defines the starting point and the end point and points of interest along the way. And as any hiker knows, that the conditioning is as important as planning out the bigger journey. And as one prepares for a journey, they can and should take the path of following exercises that help them prepare for that bigger journey. So the development of skills and expertise that are learned along the way of taking those shorter hikes is invaluable upon which to rely. And I think that's really a critical piece to keep in mind for this AI journey. Unfortunately, I see examples of people viewing AI as magic, as some wondrous technology that's going to automatically solve a problem. And they approach things as if the business basics don't really matter and that AI will just solve that existing problem. And I really think that people need to take a step back and examine the existing processes and decide the role that democratizing expertise can play in all of that. So planning and preparing a logical journey and staging that appropriately is key. So the prove, adopt, scale fits perfectly into that. Another key component of any investment in AI, analytics, and frankly, innovation is the application of that new insight into the business decision-making process. It's pretty obvious that insight's worthless unless it's acted upon. To many insurance companies, they're still struggling to effectively utilize new insights, so I emphasize the need to carefully examine the current state of operational decision-making and to make improvements with that to ensure the optimal utilization of these new insights. Simply put, if I'm adding a new insight into a business decision-making process, I should be able to retire at least one, if not two, if not three steps in that decision-making process. Otherwise, I'm just adding to an already complex underwriting, pricing, claims management, decision-making process. And I think we tend to lose track of that simple adage that the whole is equal to the sum of its parts. So that's another critical part of this change management process that I referred to, that AI is so valuable in helping us to accomplish as insurance experts.
Interesting. So we've talked about what's going on in the insurance industry today. We've looked at these three phases of prove, adapt, and scale as a way for insurers to begin their AI journey. So this is a really nice overview, and we have started to see quite a few questions come in. So I'm going to go ahead and move through them quickly. Some of them are just addressed broadly. Some of them are addressed to specifically either to you, Craig, or to Patrice. But feel free to answer them, whoever it seems, whether the question is in your ballpark. This first one I'm going to go ahead and take a look at is for you, Craig. And it says, you mentioned early on property and casualty and life and annuity companies. Is one segment of the insurance industry adopting AI faster than another?
Not necessarily, and I think there are great examples in both categories of companies. I think it actually has the dimension isn't by line of business, it's more by type of company. So those companies that have progressive management styles that have worked to align IT and business is more important than what type of insurance company, line of business that insurance company is focused on, or even for a multi-line company.
Okay, interesting. I want to ask a question. This is another one that we have. This one's actually for Patrice, and it sort of builds on some of the things that you've both talked a moment ago about in terms of what makes for a successful journey, what companies need to do to get started on that journey on the best foot. And this, again, for you, Patrice, is what characteristics do customers, IBM customers that have had success, share? What sort of things do they all have in common, would you say?
I think that the successful clients we've seen will tell you to start small and run fast. So these clients did planning, but only to get to the MVP, minimally viable product solution they needed for their first AI solution. So they didn't plan for a perfect solution. And as I said earlier, you'll learn a lot from your first AI implementation. And these clients also committed to AI and to share what they learned across the organization to gain buy-in and help other areas understand how AI might help them as well. So successful clients understand this and have started their journey knowing that they will learn and evolve. It's not once and done, as I said earlier. These clients have looked closely at what they've learned and how it's impacted their organization. For example, as previously mentioned, using AI to provide information to internal or external users so they can be more self-sufficient as freed up call center agents or more experienced people to work on harder problems. So I think our successful clients have really bought into the prove, adopt, and scale methodology and understand, start small, learn a lot, adopt, and scale is a methodology that works.
Hey, David, if I could add just to that too. The other interesting technique that I've seen used by a number of companies is what I refer to as promoting by jealousy, and that's where they've identified a real critical and often very simple aspect of their business that can be improved by AI, and gone off and built a straightforward example of that, started to advertise internally the benefits. And it's amazing as colleagues within an insurance company learn of those successes, they can extrapolate from that the lessons learned and the benefits, and all of a sudden there seems to be a fusion that occurs for interest around AI. I would point that out again. The approach that we're promoting here is a clever one for scaling that interest and expertise along the lines of an entire enterprise program.
I wanted to follow up on that just a little bit in terms, you talked about some of the ways that AI has been used. You mentioned in Singapore and some of the ways it's been used to help relieve pressure on call centers. I'm wondering, and this is a question that also came in, and maybe this is for both of you as well, any other particular pain areas or pain points that AI has particularly been effective in helping insurers and carriers relieve themselves from, particular pain points in the process?
AI is such a broad term, and IBM's used the subset of cognitive computing, but being able to take unstructured data and convert that into more structured insights. And I know from my experience that typically the original policy management and underwriting systems were designed back when the successful use of technology was printing a policy, printing a bill, and getting them to the right location. And so much of the valuable insight we had about a risk was relegated to unstructured data fields that IT had conveniently put there for us, thinking that those would be, used on occasion. They actually became some of the most valuable fields in the system, or those insights were spread around other types of data sets than databases that we had. Being able to apply artificial intelligence or cognitive computing to harvesting and harnessing those insights has really been valuable. Whether it's in the claims side, the underwriting side, or the service side, we're seeing that as a general pain that's being addressed by the use of AI.
Interesting. Here's an interesting question that came in, and it has to do, it's a little bit going back to the beginning, and it's what are some of the key first steps in determining if a firm, either in terms of its data or its control of its data or its infrastructure, is ready to embark upon this journey and implement an AI strategy? What are some of the things that you all look for in a company to see if this is a step they're ready to make?
I think that the fact that they're asking if they're ready to go is a great step because it means they're interested in it, right? We can talk about it with them. A lot of times also we do something called design thinking where you think about what would I like to do. So we have how we do things today. What are my big problem areas? how should I, if I could in a perfect world, design something? And the design thinking workshop is a short little workshop. It's not big, but it really, if you start working with IBM and you start thinking about what you might do, looking at the business problems you have today, and maybe pick a targeted area to focus on, that's a good way to start it without feeling like it's overwhelming because you're looking at the whole company. It's just pick a targeted use case and start thinking about it. But, it's definitely, it used to seem far out there. If you look at, say, studies from 2015 or 16, it's like, yeah, AI is out there, but it's not real. Now it's like, oh, yeah, it's out there and it's real. So as we have more and more client successes, I think people are buying into it more.
Sure, that makes sense.
And I think, David, as an add-on to what Patrice just said, going through the design thinking approach and coming up with a minimally viable product approach, in exercising what data is there, we often learn a couple of key things. One, the integrity of that data, whether in fact that the data we surmise is the pertinent data for the kinds of decisions and insight we need to drive, or whether in fact, as we exercise it, there's missing data or there are other data sources within our possession that can be added into that AI insight. It's a discovery process that unless you begin to exercise it and discover what it's all about, there's no magic answer. I mean, another analogy is the boil the ocean approach we took from an analytics perspective, and some theorists said you can't do analytics until you have a clean data set. And embark on a huge enterprise data warehouse program. And as an analytics person, I would always ask people, well, when did you stop reporting? Meaning that we're doing reporting or we're doing analytics on data that isn't necessarily perfect today. Let's improve those processes. I'd suggest that we're making expert decisions in ways that aren't optimal necessarily, that, said differently, AI might enhance. I think by exercising AI to see how it can improve, and again, with this concept of take it small and in iterative steps, it's not like you're boiling the ocean. And to one of the original points Patrice made, there's value in learning from your mistakes along the way, especially when they aren't catastrophically expensive.
Interesting. I just want to let our attendees know that we are taking questions for our webinar. We're in the question and answer part of the webinar right now. We still have plenty of time for additional questions. They've really started to pour in over the last 5 minutes, which is fantastic, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can. Here's another one that came in just a moment ago. Someone attended another artificial intelligence webinar not too long ago. And she says, in the near future, computers will have more knowledge than all of the humans on the planet combined, according to this webinar. This sounds kind of scary. What are your thoughts? And I'd like to send that out to both Patrice and Craig. What do we have to fear from AI in this context?
So I think, that is a scary question, but it shouldn't be scary because humans are still going to run the show. As our CEO, Ginny Rometty, likes to say all the time, AI really stands for augmented intelligence. We're helping people. We're putting, for example, knowledge in the hands of the experts as they talk to clients. Or another area I think of which is, not necessarily insurance, but we have Watson for oncology. We can look through patients' records, have knowledge about chemotherapies, radiation, clinical trials, etc., and come up with a treatment plan for a patient. But Watson's not making the decision. AI is not making the decision. It's the doctor. We're augmenting his intelligence. Same thing in the insurance industry. So I think if we can, instead of looking at, AI as something scary and it's going to take over the world, it's not. It's augmenting the intelligence of humans to make better decisions as they go about their lives. So that's really how we should look at it. But I love this question because it happens a lot.
I can imagine. Craig, you similarly?
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I just returned from a trip from London, and like anybody who takes a lot of plane travel, one of the benefits of it is you get to catch up on a lot of things. And I watched a YouTube video that I downloaded, George Gilder, and has a video that he did with the Hoover Institute, and he talks about the use of AI and the fact that these systems have no awareness. Yes, they can be programmed to sense things through instruments, etc. But being aware, as you and I as humans are, this is something that a system will never have. It's always going to be programmed. So at the end of the day, what Patrice said is, the humans are going to run the show, and I think we sometimes get carried away with that. Now, to the point of having all of the knowledge in the world, Patrice also referred to Watson and the Jeopardy challenge, and one of the things that impressed me about that was that series of computers that were all put together, had no access to the external world. In fact, Wikipedia and all of the contents that IBM could shove into that system sat in that system to help it compete with the two humans that it was up against during that challenge. Point being, that came close to already having such tremendous knowledge built into the system, but it didn't make it, an arch rival to those individuals from the standpoint of a true being. So it is scary. I know the corporate commitment to IBM and is specific, but I think there's also a technical reality to all of this that we have to keep in mind.
Certainly. I want to ask one question that I think sort of fits into this sort of more global big picture about AI, and it has to do with costs. A lot of these sound like great opportunities. Companies would like to pursue them. Just how expensive is making that early move to AI for companies?
So I don't think it has to be that expensive. I know the Watson Business Solutions are, typically around $225,000 for the 4 weeks. But it's really important because you don't have to spend a lot of money. As I said, you get a specific use case. We use your data and expertise, and what comes out of it is we've proven something. And that's why it's also important when I said pick a good use case that has value. Don't pick something cool. Don't pick something that's going to benefit 10 users even when fully implemented, because that's not going to show much value. So if you pick an area where you think you can have a big impact and start, with a small use case, and maybe not answering all the questions that might come into a call center, but maybe your top 10, show that it works. You haven't invested a lot. You've learned a lot, which will make you more successful going forward. And so it doesn't have to be that expensive. And again, when I talk about learning a lot, how did it go? What mistakes did you make? For example, you may have thought, I have questions for my users, and then you find, I don't have those, or where are those? So you may have to learn or scramble for them. But again, you haven't invested that much, so you've learned a lot. You roll it out, you're successful, you definitely will get some business value from it, and then you can use that to really, as a platform to grow bigger and scale bigger. But, like we said, when you start small, it's not going to cost you a lot, but it has tremendous value in proving out AI to the rest of the company.
Sure.
In addition, a lot of these AI services are now productized as APIs that can be subscribed to if you will, be spices to add to a current business process. But the remarkable approach that the IBM Business Solutions team has taken to create these low-hanging fruit solutions like Watson Expert Assist have been absolutely fabulous from the standpoint of getting people up and running very quickly at minimal cost.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thinking about the idea of getting people up and running and so forth, one of the questions that came up a little earlier on that I wanted to touch on was the idea of artificial intelligence and risk management and the capacity for that technology to disrupt some of the older, more established ways that corporations have managed risk. Is that something else that you see as a potentiality for this technology?
Yeah, I see the entire landscape of risk management changing in many ways, from being an insurance company responding to events that have occurred to becoming more of a proactive risk manager and providing associated services. And I have the pleasure within IBM of being in a role that allows me to get exposed to what other industries are doing. And I'll give just a real simple example. So there's been all sorts of talk about IoT from the standpoint of, insurers look at it. We can provide widgets potentially to help people understand if there's flooding occurring in their home, water leak, etc. But corporations like Kone Elevator and Escalator, and Siemens, etc., are instrumenting all of their products today. And let's talk about Kone Elevators. The corporate chief operating officer of Kone and his product people are benefiting, because if a hotel can keep its elevators from breaking down or its escalators, anybody who's in insurance knows that the first 7 minutes after an escalator is broken down are the most tragic, because the riser is 3 inches higher than the typical step, and aluminum edges are terribly unforgiving on a forehead when somebody trips and falls. The point is that corporate risk manager is going to be able to manage his trip and fall exposure and his business operations exposures, especially if it's a manufacturer, so business interruption insurance, in a different way. Isn't it logical that an insurance company provide insight and service that bridges between the chief operating officer and the chief risk officer? I switched gears a little bit from AI over to IoT, but the same sorts of capabilities that AI is going to afford us in enriching the understanding of risk and thus the management of risk are going to naturally open up opportunities for our industry to change up the way it engages with corporate risk managers as well as individuals on the individual side of things. So absolutely, it's going to change the model in every dimension that you can think of. Or said differently, it's going to offer imaginative companies opportunities to do that. And others will continue to make money off of companies and individuals that want to follow the traditional means. How long that will go on, I do think as a psychology major, there are people who just don't want to bother with risk, so they'll blindly turn it over. But I do think the world is changing.
Yeah,
and
excellent. And I appreciate you bringing that out. Yes, Patrice, please.
The other thing with AI is you can now, as I mentioned earlier, access like unstructured data. So you may have things you couldn't access before in your data to learn more, to, as Craig said, to be proactive or to understand things that you may have data there before you couldn't access or couldn't understand, or it would take too long to understand. Now you can get out those insights and therefore, make better decisions, and certainly that can impact your risk. So I think it really opens up a lot of different areas.
Not to belabor it, but literally the call just before this webinar was with colleagues and a client in Australia that is now taking medical insights that heretofore, IBM has been generating for doctors. That diagnosis is critical that Watson Health is providing, but that same insight is invaluable for workers' compensation, back to work efforts, and the analysis of differentiation between short-term and long-term disability, and being able to appropriately adjudicate claims in that regard and do what they're referring to as predictive health for their clients. So things are enabled, to Patrice's point, by getting insights where we couldn't derive them before through AI.
Excellent. And thanks for broadening that discussion out a little bit to give us maybe even a more complete actual picture of how technology is going to enable us to deal with risk differently. We've got about 10 minutes left for the webinar, and I do want to save a little time for some sort of key takeaways and summations from our guests. But we do have time for at least one more question here that came in, and I think this one is maybe perhaps a good question here. What are the 3 most reported outcomes from implementing AI as viewed from a point of view of ROI? Which may be a good question to take off here, and we'll leave that open to both Teresa and Craig.
Sure. So I think it's some of the things we've talked about, because there's many things you could look at for ROI, but, getting access to information you couldn't access before. So, for example, in insurance, agents being able to talk to clients with better advice and deepen their client relationships, because they don't have to dig through hundreds of documents. They can find this information more at their fingertips. So, strengthening the client relationship certainly is important if you have a business where you're externally facing clients. And again, also internally then, making your folks internally maybe train quicker, as Craig said, democratizing, that knowledge within your company. And I think also being able to anticipate things, be proactive, because you can learn things ahead of time, see trends that are coming. We haven't talked about other areas with AI, but, call centers or see what voice of the customer, what your customers are saying about you, maybe in social media, discovering that, uncovering that, being able to get ahead of that curve. So it's really a lot of different things from ROI, but I think it's probably, understanding your clients better, having deeper relationships, enabling your people within your company. Those are some of the things I can think of, and I know, Craig, you probably have additional ones.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I think a couple of the key ones are improving the efficiency of skilled employees by eliminating a lot of the lower hanging sorts of capabilities, the overhead that went into data preparation or data analysis before that expert could get to the point of making a decision. And a couple of real-life examples that are public references. REMAC in Peru has utilized AI and cognitive computing to really enhance the analysis and categorization of claims, to allow the claims professional within their organization to spend not the time doing that sifting and shifting of data, but ultimately applying their claims expertise to adjudicating the claim. Fukoku Life, which early on made our toes curl as IBMers when the Japanese headlines talked about the number of employees being laid off because claims were now being handled by Watson, which was not really accurate. Again, this was a case of health insurance and life insurance claims being the coding of the loss driver being done and the categorization being done using artificial intelligence, which again not only helped the efficiency of the claims process, but what was done was it did allow Fukoku Life to terminate contracts with external parties that they'd relied upon to extend their staff to handle those administrative types of activities. And we're seeing inside of insurance companies where the roles are changing, where again, a lot of the mechanical types of tasks that can be tackled by AI has allowed insurance companies to apply talent in different ways. The other one is along the lines of accuracy, so it ties hand in hand with all of this. But the effort to go towards straight-through processing both involves operational and decision management changes, but enhancing that with AI is increasing the throughput for straight-through processing. So there are efficiency score types of capabilities. And then we are seeing examples of customer satisfaction scores. So actually, I'm mentally trying to determine whether I can reference the companies by name, but 2 major insurers here in North America have both seen substantial improvements in customer satisfaction by being able to service clients' questions, and again, not through a rote chatbot, which I refer to as a programmed FAQ machine, but one that can actually understand sentiment and respond to unscripted types of questions. They've actually seen people appreciate the service, and I think part of that emanates from the standpoint that none of us wants to sound stupid, and my definition of a stupid question is one that you have that you don't ask. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't view it that way. So they felt more comfortable asking a machine a question and getting advice to some of the most basic of questions that you and I as insurance people wouldn't even think people would necessarily have a question about. Those are a couple of other examples of ROI.
Sure. Well, we've got less than 5 minutes to go, so I want to thank everybody for joining us with our webinar, for participating. I want to have some time for maybe a key takeaway each from Patrice and Craig before we go, though. Maybe, Patrice, we could start with you.
Sure. So I think, as we've said multiple times, but we really want to drive home the point, is AI is a journey during which you'll grow and evolve. And again, as was asked earlier, don't think of AI as replacing humans. Our CEO likes to say AI stands for augmented intelligence, and that's exactly what AI does for humans. It augments our intelligence by providing us the information or data we need to make well-informed decisions when we need that information. So it's time to start the journey. AI's here. It's a reality, so don't wait. As I've mentioned, start small so you can quickly grow and learn, because there's really tremendous benefits from AI in many areas. So go ahead and take advantage of that.
Excellent, and you definitely pointed out some of those opportunities and advantages today. Craig, perhaps a key takeaway from you.
Yeah, and it's pretty basic. You know, the field of AI continues to evolve, and it's definitely going to play a role in insurance, as I've already said. And I believe the biggest role will be in providing expert assistance to advisors, to sellers, and to servicers as they help to manage the risk management needs of individual and corporate clients. It'll also help to a certain degree to self-service assistance. But as I said in the very beginning, insurance is a business of trust and promises. To continue to earn that trust and to effectively fulfill on the promises we make as insurers, we have an opportunity to scale our expertise in using AI, and I believe that's really going to be the common denominator for the success of insurance companies going forward.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. It's really something else to see the way that technology across so many different fields is really revitalizing the way we looked at so many things that we'd either taken for granted or become particularly comfortable in the terms that we've been able to approach them. Having just returned from Hong Kong for one of our conferences and seeing some of the innovative ways, I know you mentioned Pruitt, Singapore, that insurance technology is really taking off by leveraging technologies like AI. It's just really, really something impressive and something we definitely are going to be keeping our eye out for an IBM's contribution to this effort going forward. So I want to thank both of our panelists, Patrice Sully and Craig Bedell, for joining us and giving us quite a bit to think about in terms of InsurTech and artificial intelligence. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us on today's webinar. This is all the time we have for our presentation today, I'm afraid. Please know that the webinar has been recorded and is going to be available for review in a few days, so stay tuned for that, and we'll let you know when those are available. In the meantime, again, thank our guests, Patrice and Craig. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day and a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.